This story follows a woman who begins to notice her family slowly pulling away from her. Invitations to gatherings become rare, conversations grow shorter, and she convinces herself that everyone is simply busy with their own lives. Yet a quiet ache grows as she realizes she no longer feels included in the family she once considered her safe place. One afternoon, while sorting through old papers and her late father's belongings, she discovers a letter tucked between worn envelopes. Every member of her family has signed it. The letter reveals an agreement among them to hide a devastating truth about her father, believing she was too fragile to bear it. In that moment, she feels the weight of betrayal, not only for the secret itself, but for the choice they made to keep her outside the circle of truth. The story unfolds through her emotional journey as she pieces together why they hid the truth, confronts relatives who loved her but did not trust her with the family's deepest wound, and learns to navigate the thinning lines between protection and betrayal. Through heartbreak, confrontation, and eventual understanding, she begins to reclaim her voice and rebuild her sense of belonging. The narrative ends with a gentle reflection on how secrets shape families, how silence can wound as deeply as lies, and how healing begins when truth finally sees the light. I knew something was wrong the moment I felt that empty chair beside me. It was strange how an empty place at the table could feel louder than a room full of voices. That night, while everyone else laughed and passed dishes around, a soft heaviness settled on my chest, as if the silence itself was trying to tell me something I had ignored for far too long. I remember sitting there with my hands folded in my lap, pretending the sting in my heart was only a passing thought. But deep down, I felt it, a quiet shift, a thinning of warmth, a distance that had not been there before. I kept my smile soft and steady, the way I always do, but my heart trembled, like a small bird pressed against a window. If someone had asked me that evening what was wrong, I would have given them the same answer I had been giving myself for months. Everyone is busy. Life moves fast. I should not take it personally. But inside, something whispered a different truth, one I was not yet brave enough to face. Later that night, after the dishes were washed and the last porch light clicked off across the yard, I sat alone in my living room with only the hum of the refrigerator keeping me company. It felt strange to realize how long it had been since someone in my family had called just to hear my voice. Strange how often gatherings happened without me even knowing. I pressed my hand gently against my chest, feeling the slow thud of my heartbeat. Why does it feel like they are slipping away from me? That was the first moment I allowed the question to form. The first moment I admitted that the distance was real, not imagined. But I did not yet know that everything I felt was only the surface of something deeper, something carefully hidden, wrapped in silence, and sealed behind signatures written by the very people I trusted most. And I certainly did not know that a single letter tucked away in a place I rarely touched would change the way I saw my family forever. Before all the distance, life used to feel simple, almost tender. My mornings were marked by the soft hiss of my kettle boiling, the smell of jasmine tea curling through my kitchen, and sunlight slipping gently across the counter. I lived near enough to my family that their voices often spilled into my days, whether through an unexpected visit or a warm invitation to dinner. I had always been the one who listened more than I spoke. My siblings used to say they could hear comfort in the way I breathed. My mother would often rest her hand on mine when she told stories about our father, her voice slow and steady, like the rhythm of an old lullaby. My father had passed years earlier, and though the loss softened with time, it never really loosened its hold on me. Still, I found a kind of peace in the memories I carried, in the pieces of him I kept close. Family gatherings were full of small, familiar things. The sizzle of fish on my sister's stove, the clatter of children running through the hallway, the way my eldest brother laughed with his whole chest, as if joy lived inside his lungs. These details were the threads that wove us together, or at least, that is what I believed. Then little shifts began, small things at first, so subtle I brushed them aside. A message left unanswered. A gathering I heard about only after seeing photos online. A birthday dinner that no one mentioned until it had already passed. I told myself they were busy, overwhelmed, distracted. I told myself not to be sensitive, not to read too deeply into passing shadows. After all, families change, people grow, schedules fill. But sometimes, it was the way they looked at me that unsettled something deep in my spirit. A softness in their eyes that felt too practiced. A hesitation in their voices, as if they were choosing their words not to wound me. A quiet that felt less like peace and more like protection. Something unspoken floated between us, a fragile veil I could not name. I kept walking through my days as though everything was normal. I cooked the same meals, kept my home warm and tidy, moved gently through each hour. But the hollow inside me began to echo, whispering questions that followed me like shadows. Why do I feel like they are keeping something from me? Why does every conversation feel like a doorway they do not want me to walk through? Still, I smiled. Still, I gave them grace. Because if there is one thing I have always done, it is assuming the best in the people I love. Little did I know that behind all those careful pauses and softened voices was a truth so heavy my entire family had chosen to carry it without me. A truth about my father. A truth they believed would break me. The truth they promised one another never to let me see. And the letter that bound their promise was waiting for me, tucked quietly in the shadows of my past, patient and merciless. It was a quiet afternoon when the first real clue appeared. The kind that does not shout or demand attention, but settles in your mind like a pebble in a shoe. I had stopped by my sister Lena's house with a small basket of steamed buns, still warm and wrapped in a soft towel. I remember the sunlight slipping through her curtains, bathing her living room in a gentle, honey-colored glow. I knocked and waited. Usually, she would open the door with that familiar, wide smile. But that day, she peeked through the side window first. Her eyes widened for a heartbeat before she pulled the door open. Her smile came late. Too late. She said my name too softly, as if she had been caught holding something behind her back. I stepped inside, letting the warmth of her home wrap around me. There was a faint scent of ginger and garlic, and the kettle on her stove whistled softly, letting me know she had been cooking before I arrived. Yet something felt off. Her shoulders seemed a little too tense, her voice a little too airy. I set the basket down and glanced toward the dining table, where a stack of papers lay scattered. Some pages were turned face down, others were folded in sharp, purposeful lines. When she noticed my eyes drifting toward them, she moved quickly, sliding them into a drawer with a forced laugh. "Private work," she said. "Just boring things. You would not care about them." Her words were light, but her hands trembled ever so slightly. She closed the drawer too fast, too hard, as if she feared whatever was inside might find a way to slip out. Something in that moment brushed against the back of my heart. Not fear. Not yet. Just an uneasy curiosity, the kind that whispers instead of speaks. We sat down with cups of tea, and I watched her avoid my gaze each time I asked about our brothers, our cousins, or the next family gathering. She kept stirring her tea long after the sugar had dissolved, the spoon clicking the ceramic cup in a nervous rhythm. When I mentioned that I had not seen our family group chat active in a while, she nodded too quickly, said everyone was busy, said she would tell them I asked. But somehow that answer did not settle. It felt thin, like paper held against the rain. That night, when I returned home, I walked into the quiet and felt it press against me, a little heavier than before. I set my keys on the counter and stared at the ceiling, replaying the details. The hesitation in her eyes. The papers she hid. The forced smile she wore like a too-tight sweater. It could have ended there. I could have brushed it aside the way I had brushed aside so many little things. But the next incident made that impossible. A week later, I arrived at our mother's house unannounced, carrying a small pot of soup she always loved. I wanted to surprise her, bring her warmth, bring her a piece of the daughter she raised. But as I walked up the pathway, I heard voices inside, soft, urgent. I paused, not to eavesdrop, but because something in the tone pulled me still. I heard my name. My mother said it with a weight I had never heard before. Then my brother's voice followed, low and strained. "We need to keep it quiet. She is not ready." My heart tightened so sharply, I had to grip the railing beside me. The world felt thick, as if the air itself had turned to syrup. I took a step back, trying to steady my breath. I did not want to enter the home like a storm, so I knocked gently, pretending I had heard nothing at all. The conversation stopped abruptly. Too abruptly. The door opened, and both of them stared at me with startled eyes. As if I had arrived at the wrong time, the wrong moment, the wrong version of the truth. My mother recovered first, pulling me into a hug, but her arms felt stiff. My brother gave me a smile that did not touch his eyes. For the rest of that visit, they tried too hard to act normal. Offered me extra soup, talked about the weather, asked about my work. But no one looked me directly in the eyes for more than a heartbeat. When I left the house, the sky had already turned a deep shade of blue, the kind that makes the streetlights look lonely. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my bag tightly against my chest, and realized there was no more pretending. Something was wrong. Not small. Not accidental. Not imagined. Something heavy lived in the silence of my family, and they were all holding it together like a secret sewn into a blanket they refused to let me touch. And for the first time, instead of feeling confused, I felt afraid. Afraid of what they were not saying. Afraid of who they thought I was. Afraid of what truth they believed would break me. But fear has a way of sharpening awareness. From that day on, every hesitation, every whispered pause, every glance shared between them became another thread pulling me closer to the truth. I just did not yet know that the truth was already written, already signed, already waiting for me in a place I had not opened in years. The day I found the letter began like any other, with the soft shuffle of morning light drifting across my living room floor. I had opened the windows to let in fresh air, hoping it would chase away the heaviness that had settled in my home. My mind had been busy for days, turning over every strange moment with my family like stones in my hand, examining each one for cracks. I told myself I needed a distraction. Something quiet. Something simple. So I decided to clean the old storage chest I had kept tucked beneath my bookshelf. It was a wooden box my father once used for keeping small things he treasured. I had not opened it fully in years. I always felt a certain tenderness toward it, as if disturbing the contents inside might disturb him too. I lifted the lid slowly, brushing away a thin layer of dust. Inside were familiar pieces of my childhood. My father's old fountain pen with the faded gold tip, a dried sprig of jasmine he once tucked behind my ear, a handful of photos curled at the edges. I sat on the floor, letting my fingers drift over each item, feeling memories rise like warm breath against my skin. Then I saw it. A thin envelope wedged beneath the wooden divider. Not yellowed with age, but fresh. Too fresh to belong in a box untouched for so long. My heart began to beat in a low, uneasy drum as I reached for it. My name was written on the front in my sister's handwriting. Not with affection, not with warmth. The strokes were tense, hesitant. I held the letter for a long moment before opening it, as if my hands knew before my mind did that whatever lay inside would change something irreversible. When the flap opened, a soft scent of paper and ink drifted upward. Several sheets were folded together. I unfolded the first page and saw lines of writing, each sentence pressed heavily into the paper, as if the one who wrote them carried a burden too heavy to hold gently. The words blurred at the edges as I began to read. They had made a pact. Every one of them. My brothers, my sister, even my mother. The letter stated that they agreed to keep a truth from me regarding my father. A truth they believed would shatter me. A truth they decided I did not need to know. My breath caught as I moved to the next page. This one held signatures. All of theirs. Unable to deny, unable to explain. My hands trembled as I continued reading. They had learned, years ago, that my father had another daughter. A child he had never told me about. A child born before I came into his life. A child my family had met. A child they accepted quietly. A child they believed I could not handle knowing. My vision blurred as the words twisted inside my chest. The betrayal did not come from the truth itself. It came from the silent decision they made. The choice to treat me as fragile porcelain that might crack at the slightest touch of honesty. My family had built a wall around me, brick by brick, lie by lie, all while calling it protection. I read on. They promised to never tell me because after my father passed, they feared the grief would be too heavy for me to carry. They said I had been too broken, too delicate, too dependent on the image I held of him. They believed hiding this was an act of love. But love should not suffocate. Love should not blindfold. Love should not steal truth from the one who deserves it. The last page was written in my mother's hand. Her voice echoed in the shaky lines of ink. She wrote that she had begged them to keep the secret because she feared losing me the same way she had lost him. She believed I needed the memory of my father untouched, untainted. I stared at her words until they blurred like rain on glass. My father was not the man I thought he was. My mother was not the woman I believed she was. And my siblings had not seen me as equal, but as something fragile to be shielded. My heart tightened as if someone had wrapped their hands around it. The room seemed smaller, the air thinner. I pressed the letter against my chest and tried to breathe through the ache. Why did they think I was too weak to know the truth? Why did they choose silence instead of trust? Why did they sign their names to a decision that carved me out of my own family? The betrayal sat heavy inside me, like a stone sinking through water. I wanted to cry, but no tears came. I wanted to shout, but my voice was caught somewhere deep in my throat. Instead, I sat in that quiet, holding the truth my family had hidden for years. A part of my father existed somewhere out there, living, breathing, carrying his blood. And all this time they believed I could not carry that knowledge. A slow, trembling breath escaped me as a realization settled into my bones. This was not just a secret. It was a choice they made together, a choice they made without me, a choice that cut deeper than any truth they tried to hide. The betrayal was not in my father's past. The betrayal was in their signatures. The moment I understood that, something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter, heavier. The kind of hurt that does not shout. The kind that whispers through your veins and changes the way you see everything. I folded the letter slowly, my hands steady now. The truth was mine, at last. And whatever came next would not be driven by fear. I stood up from the floor, holding the envelope like a fragile flame. For the first time in a long while, I knew exactly what I needed to do. When the first wave of shock faded, what followed was a quiet, trembling stillness. The kind that settles inside you when a truth cannot be undone. I sat on the edge of my bed with the letter resting on my lap, my fingers tracing the folds again and again. Each signature felt like a small crack in the foundation of the family I thought I knew. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I simply breathed in slow, shaky breaths, each one feeling like it was stitched with needles. For a long time, I just sat there, listening to the clock tick on the wall. The soft rhythm felt almost cruel in its normalcy. How could the world keep moving the same way when mine had shifted so drastically beneath my feet? After a while, a thought began to take shape. Soft at first, then sharper. If they all agreed to hide this from me, then it meant they had been talking about me behind closed doors for years, discussing what I could handle, what I could not, deciding for me, choosing silence instead of trust. The hurt moved through me like a slow, heavy tide. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, needing something to ground me. I filled a glass with water, but my hands trembled so much I spilled some on the counter. I watched the drops slide across the smooth surface, and somehow that small, simple movement steadied me. I wiped it clean. That was when the resolve began to rise in me, like something long asleep finally waking. I deserved answers. Not excuses. Not comforting lies. Answers. But I also knew I needed to understand the truth fully before facing any of them. My father's child, my half-sister, a woman somewhere out there who had lived her life without me knowing she even existed. Who was she? Where was she? Did she know about me? Or had she also been kept in the dark? The questions gathered inside my chest like a storm. I decided my first step would not be confronting my family. Not yet. Confrontation without clarity often leads to more hurt. So I chose a quieter path. A thoughtful path. A path my father would have recognized in me. I needed more information. More truth. That evening, I went through every box of my father's belongings that I had left untouched for years. The soft smell of old paper rose into the air as I opened each lid. My hands moved through faded photographs, certificates, small trinkets he kept from his work, and little notes he had written to himself in his delicate handwriting. It was in the bottom of the third box that I found something that made my breath falter. A small notebook. Black cover. Worn at the edges. Inside, the first page held my father's handwriting. It was unmistakable, that gentle slant he had always written with. Inside this book are the things I never had the courage to say aloud. My fingers trembled as I turned the page. There were letters. Messages he had written to each of us. Words filled with love, with regret, with hope. But toward the middle, I found what I had been unknowingly searching for. He wrote about her. His other daughter. He wrote that she was born before he met my mother. That the situation had been complicated, marked by mistakes and misunderstandings he carried deeply. He wrote about feeling torn between the life he wanted to build and the past he had not yet learned how to face. He wrote about wanting to tell me. About several moments when he almost did. But each time, he feared he would disappoint me, that the pedestal I placed him on was too high, and the fall would be too painful for both of us. He wrote of regret that felt heavy, sorrowful, human. As I read, tears filled my eyes, not from anger, but from something more tender, understanding. My father was not the perfect man I had imagined. He was simply a man who made mistakes and carried them quietly, hoping time would make them easier to bear. I pressed my hand against the page, feeling the indentations of his handwriting beneath my fingertips. That small physical evidence brought me a strange comfort, as if he had left a piece of himself behind to guide me through the very truth he never managed to speak aloud. After the tears came clarity. I needed to speak to my family, but not in anger, not in wild emotion. I would speak with the same steadiness my father once used when teaching me how to face a storm without letting it devour me. Still, I would not go to them empty-handed. I tucked the letter they had signed into a small folder. Then I placed the black notebook beside it. These were my truth now, and truth, once found, cannot be undone. The next morning, I made my decision. I would gather them all, not one by one, where excuses could be crafted or softened with practiced tones, but together, where their silence would sit between us like a mirror they could not avoid. I walked to my dining table, the worn wood smooth beneath my fingertips. I reached for my phone, hesitating for just a breath, before sending a message into our family group chat. I need to see all of you. Today, at my house. The message was simple, quiet, firm. It did not ask. It told. Within moments, my phone lit up with replies. Lena asked if something was wrong. My younger brother said he was busy but would try to make it. My eldest brother wrote that he was on the way. My mother simply responded with a single word. Coming. I set the phone down and stared at it for a long moment. My hands were steady now, my breath calm. Whatever the truth held, whatever explanations they believed they owed me, I would hear them. But not as a fragile woman, not as someone who needed protection from reality. I would hear them as myself, as a woman with a spine strengthened by truth, as my father's daughter, both of his daughters. And when they arrived, when they stepped through my doorway, I would finally show them that keeping truth from me had never protected me. It had only broken what did not need breaking. They arrived one by one, each of them carrying a different expression, yet all of them carrying the same quiet tension. I stood at the doorway as they stepped inside. None of them removed their shoes right away, as if they were unsure whether they had been welcomed or summoned. My mother entered last. Her eyes met mine, trembling with questions she was not yet ready to ask. I stepped aside and allowed her to pass. The house felt smaller, with all of them gathered in my living room. The air held the weight of unspoken words, pressing down on us like humidity before a storm. No one sat until I gestured toward the chairs. When they finally did, it was as if the furniture groaned under the strain of their unease. I took my place across from them, not above them, not beneath them, but facing them directly. My hand smoothed the folder on my lap, though I did not open it yet. For a moment, the only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Then my eldest brother cleared his throat. His voice was low, careful. Your message sounded serious. What is going on? I studied his face, the same face that used to shield me from life's small cruelties. For years, he had been the steady one, the protective one, and yet he had signed my name away from the truth without hesitation. I unfolded the letter slowly and placed it on the coffee table. Every eye in the room followed the movement. Every breath seemed to pause. I spoke gently, because anger was too heavy to carry into this moment. I found this in Father's old box. Their shoulders stiffened. Lena's breath caught. My mother's lips parted in a small, broken sound. No one reached for the pages. Not at first. I continued. I know about her, his other daughter. I know all of you agreed to hide the truth from me. The room exhaled in a shattered kind of silence. A silence filled with guilt, fear, and the sudden realization that their secret was no longer theirs to hold. Lena was the first to cry. Her hands flew to her face as small, trembling sobs escaped her lips. I am sorry, she whispered. We thought it would protect you. My younger brother leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his voice cracking as he spoke. You were already hurting when Father passed. We thought you could not handle more pain. I looked at him, truly looked, and beneath his guilt I saw a young man who had been trying to protect the sister he loved, even if he chose the wrong path. Still, the hurt inside me stirred. And you all decided that, without me? You signed something? Without even trusting me with the truth? My eldest brother rubbed his temples, a gesture he used to do when overwhelmed. We made a mistake. We know that now. Mother was afraid. And we followed her lead. My mother's voice emerged soft but trembling. I begged them to keep it from you. I could not lose you too. When you lost him, something in you cracked. I saw it. I felt it. I thought, if you learned he had another child, it would break you completely. She reached for my hand, but I drew it back gently. Not out of anger. Out of self-preservation. I wanted to feel her touch, but my skin still carried the sting of betrayal. Mother, I said quietly. Love should not come wrapped in secrets. Her eyes glistened, and her breath trembled. I know that now, but at the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. We sat together in the heaviness of her words. Each one was sincere, yet each one carried its own wound. I opened the black notebook next, setting it beside the letter. Their eyes widened as they recognized my father's handwriting. A soft murmur passed through them, something between grief and reverence. He wrote about her, I said softly. He wanted to tell me himself. He was afraid, yes, but he was trying. He left these words behind, hoping they would reach me one day. My mother covered her mouth, a sound escaping her that was more ache than breath. He wrote about wanting to tell you, she whispered. Why did he never... Her voice cracked. Why did he never tell me this? She was not asking me. She was asking herself. For a moment, the room was not filled with secrets or tension. It was filled with grief. Shared grief. A grief that no one could hide behind signatures or silence. My younger brother leaned back, running a trembling hand through his hair. We thought we were protecting you, he said. But maybe we were protecting ourselves too. From the weight of the truth. From how it would change everything. His honesty softened something in me. Just a little. Just enough to let my breathing ease. Lena wiped her eyes and looked at me with a rawness I had not seen in years. We never wanted to hurt you. We just did everything wrong while trying to do what we thought was right. I let their words settle. Not forgiven. Not forgotten. But acknowledged. What came next was quiet. Not explosive. Not dramatic. I looked at each of them, letting the calm in my voice guide the moment. I needed the truth, not the polished version, not your fears. I needed honesty, and I need it now. Do any of you know where she is? Father's daughter. Their eyes met one another in a silent exchange. Then my eldest brother nodded slowly. Yes, we do. My heart tightened. Not from fear this time, but from the weight of what was coming. The truth was no longer buried. It was standing in the room with us, shaping itself into something undeniable. Whatever happened next would ripple through our family forever. Some bonds might stretch. Some might break. And some might find a new way to mend. But there was no hiding anymore. No returning to the world before the letter. The consequence had come to all of us, not just me. My family was finally seeing that secrets do not protect. They corrode. And sometimes, the only way forward is through the truth we once feared. The days after the confrontation felt strangely quiet, as if the world itself had paused to let my heart find its rhythm again. My family left my home that evening with heavy steps and heavier hearts. No one raised their voice. No one stormed out. But every one of them walked away, carrying the weight of what had been broken between us. I did not call them. They did not call me. For the first time in my life, silence felt like something I needed. A space to breathe. A space to untangle truth from pain. I spent that week moving slowly through my days. I watered my plants in the early morning, feeling the cool mist gather on my hands. I made myself simple meals, letting the smell of warm broth fill my kitchen. I sat by the window in the evenings, watching the light fade behind the rooftops. And every night, when the house settled into stillness, I would open my father's notebook. I read his words again and again. Not because I wanted to relive the hurt, but because in those pages, I found pieces of the man I had missed for so long. His regrets, his hope, his honesty, even in silence. One night, as I traced the curve of his handwriting with the tip of my finger, a realization softened inside me. He never meant to deceive me. He struggled to tell the truth. And the rest of my family, they struggled to hold it. Everyone had been carrying their own version of fear. My mother's fear of losing me. My siblings' fear of hurting me, my father's fear of disappointing me. Fear, I learned, can twist love into knots. But I was done living inside those knots. On the fourth morning, I called my eldest brother. He answered on the second ring, his voice quiet, as if he had been waiting. "Can we meet?" I asked softly. "Of course," he replied. We met at a small tea shop near the river, a place we used to visit when we were younger. He looked older that day, not in years, but in the weight he carried on his shoulders. When he sat down, he did not hide his emotions. His voice trembled when he spoke. "I am so sorry. We all are. I wish we had handled things differently." I listened, really listened. I told him that pain does not erase love, but it does demand truth. I told him I needed time, but not distance. And I told him I wanted to know everything they knew about her. He nodded, relief softening the lines around his eyes. "We do not know much," he admitted. "Father kept most of it quiet. But she lives a few towns away. Mother has an address." A breath left me slowly, not with fear, but with a strange, fragile hope. For the next few days, I met with each member of my family. My younger brother took my hands and cried as he apologized. Lena hugged me so tightly I felt her heart beating against my chest. My mother held my face in her trembling palms and whispered that she had been wrong to try to protect me through silence. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I thought I was saving you from pain, but I see now I only gave you a different kind of pain, a deeper one." I leaned into her touch for the first time since the truth came out. And slowly, gently, the gap between us softened. Healing did not arrive all at once. It came in moments. Small, quiet moments that stitched themselves into the days. One afternoon, my mother brought me a small envelope. It was sealed with an old stamp, the kind my father used to keep in his desk. She handed it to me with trembling hands. This was the only letter he left for her, his other daughter. Inside was a simple note with her name, an address, and a message only a father could write. "I hope you find your place in this world, even if I cannot walk beside you." I held that letter as if it were a fragile part of him. A part of me too. That night, I sat alone at my dining table, letting the soft glow of the lamp illuminate the envelope. I rested my hand over it, feeling the faint texture of the paper beneath my palm. I did not know her yet. I did not know her story. But I knew she was a part of my father. A part of the truth. And in some quiet way, a part of me. I breathed slowly, letting the moment settle. I would not rush into this. I would not force anything. But I would not hide either. Healing, I realized, is not the act of forgetting a wound. It is the act of walking with it until the pain softens into wisdom. In the weeks that followed, my family began to circle around me again. But this time, their steps were slower, more mindful. They spoke to me with honesty they had once been afraid to offer. They invited me to dinners, not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. And I attended, not with suspicion, but with a steadying heart. We learned to be a family again, not a perfect one, but a truthful one. And someday, when my heart felt ready, I would write to her, to my father's daughter, not to fill a missing piece, not to replace anything lost, but simply to open the door to whatever truth waited next. When I look back on everything now, I no longer see the story as a tale of betrayal. I see it as a journey through the fragile places of love, where fear and silence try to disguise themselves as protection. I see a family that stumbled, a family that made choices out of worry rather than wisdom, out of tenderness rather than truth. And I see myself, sitting on the floor of my living room, holding that letter like a mirror, not a mirror to shame them, but a mirror that finally showed me who I was beyond their fears. A woman strong enough to carry truth. A daughter capable of loving her father even in his imperfections. A sister who could still open her heart, even after being shut out. Healing did not come in a sudden rush. It arrived in small, quiet steps. A shared cup of tea. A long, honest conversation. A hand resting gently over mine without trembling. I learned that secrets do not disappear just because we hide them. They wait. They linger. They shape the spaces between us. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is open the door and let the truth walk in with all its tenderness and weight. I still have the envelope on my desk. The one with her name, my father's handwriting, and a story waiting to be continued. One day, when my heart is steady enough, I will write to her. Not because blood demands it, Not because I feel obligated, but because truth deserves light. And love, real love, deserves the chance to grow in honesty. Some wounds do not disappear. They soften. They teach. They guide us toward the kind of strength we once doubted we had. Tonight, as I sit here with the soft hum of my lamp and the steady warmth of my tea, I find myself asking you something from the quiet place in my heart. Have you ever been kept in the dark by the very people who claim to protect you? And if you were standing where I stood, holding the truth in your hands, would you open the door to what comes next? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Your stories remind me I am not alone. If my journey spoke to you, feel free to follow, subscribe, or share this story. Your support helps keep these stories alive, lighting the way for someone who may still be walking through their own quiet storm. Thank you for listening, and may your truth, whatever it is, lead you gently toward healing.